I'm Khaled, and I'm a product manager on the living room team at Google. And my focus is cast games and bringing games to the living room. Yeah, I have one fan already. So Google Cast is designed for you to interact with your home entertainment devices with your mobile phone. So your TVs, your speakers, now with Chromecast audio, it's a very fluid experience that most people already know how to do. You already know and love how you're searching for content on your mobile phone. And it's a really, really simple process. You find the content, you tap the button, the content's on the TV, right? And Chromecast has been doing exceptionally well. It's a top-selling streaming device. As we announced last September, it has done over 20 million in sales. And we've launched the new Chromecast and its colorful variations you see up there. It's really fun. And we've also launched Chromecast Audio, where you can now stream your favorite mobile apps, audio apps to the different devices that you have around your home. So let's jump right into it, right? Why make a Google Cast game? So a Google Cast game is going to enable a multi-screen experience. So now you're playing on your TV as well as on your phone. People love games so much that it's the top category on all of the app stores available. But gaming on the TV is actually not that simple. You have to spend a few $100s on a console, get a bunch of controllers for all your friends that are coming in. Wouldn't it be much simpler if the mobile games that you have can immediately be played on your TV? With Chromecast, you absolutely can do that. And the entry level is basically $35 for a Chromecast device. What does that mean for you as a developer? Well, across Google Cast, when games and apps are connected to the TV, we're seeing stronger engagement, increased monetization, and given that the living room is inherently social, people are there and commenting on how bad you're playing, we're seeing an increase in downloads for multiplayer titles, which is great. Given that it's also on your phone, you can utilize all the power of your phone. Everything from infrastructure is already there. If you've already built your app, it becomes much simpler to just build cast functionality and have it run on the TV. So let's talk a bit about the user experience and some things to consider with a cast game. Oops. Did it switch to the right slide? There you go. All right. So first thing to consider is private versus public information. Now you have a new set of experiences that are open for you. Players that are in your living room each have their own screen, and then there's a big shared TV screen that they can play with. If you consider a poker game, the dealer could be on the TV, and everyone's personal cards are on their phone, and that's so much fun. At the same time, given that this is a split information, please make sure that the player doesn't really need to figure out where they're looking. This is what we call look fatigue. Players should not be switching constantly from TV to phone and trying to figure out where they look. It should be very smooth to them. Following with the whole cast experience being very smooth, few taps to get your content on the TV. And same thing for multiplayer. The first player is going to have a really smooth experience getting the game up there with one tap of a button. The person joining should have the same experience. It's just simply one tap, get into the game, and start playing. And those are the best kind of experiences you can have with your friends on the couch. Sorry, there's a bit of latency happening between me switching and... So, given the phone as a controller, you obviously have a lot to work with in terms of interaction models. There's a whole spectrum for more abstract, just simply gyroscope and accelerometer, to then the more traditional that you use with your phone now, which is specified taps and targeted touch inputs. So I wanted to highlight some of these interaction models and give you a recommendation on what's best to use. And obviously, this is just a recommendation, so I highly recommend first that you guys experiment and see what works best for your game. First up, we have gestures and non-targeted taps. This works great with something like an endless runner. You're not even looking down at your phone, you're just swiping left and right and up. And then it has minimum to almost non-existent look fatigue, because players don't even need to look down on their phone. Next up is gyroscope and accelerometer. Very, very intuitive, really nice in party games where everyone's flailing their phone around in the living room. And everyone knows that you steer your phone is equal to steering a car in a game, right? Everyone knows that. Third up is targeted touch input, which we talked about a bit. You're targeting specific items on the phone screen. And this could be good for a lot of experiences, such as a board game, a card game. But obviously, you don't want people to look down on their phone when a lot of action is happening on the TV. Last but not least is the microphone. Very underutilized. Anyone agrees? Very underutilized in games today. I really would like to see party games where everyone's shouting at their phone and trying to, guess stuff coming up on the TV. And lastly, you should definitely mix and match with all of these. Try and figure out what's best for your specific game. Driver Speedboat Paradise is out right now, and it has a really great interaction model where you're tilting the phone to steer a speedboat, but then you do swipes on the screen for different tricks with your speedboat. It's a lot of fun. You guys should try it out. Now let's do a quick technical overview of everything involved with cast games. So there are two ways to use cast games and to build your game for cast or cast enable it. The simplest one is to use an HTML5 and use Game Manager for multiplayer, so web applications that are run on the receiver or the Google Cast device. A more advanced, and probably more interesting way is remote display, where you can use the full power of your device to render frames on the GPU and broadcast them to the TV. This ends up being a very high-quality gaming experience because you're using a very powerful device that is already in your pocket. A lot of resources are available for you. Google Games Hub is developers.google.com/games. You can find all of these resources that will help you in building games in general, but I won't be covering these because we're going to focus on cast games specifically. And the resources for those are on a developer page specifically for cast. You have the Cast SDK, the Cast Game Manager API, and then for remote display, you have the Remote Display API and the plugin that we built for Unity. I'll cover those more in a bit. So the Cast SDK itself is the foundation for all of our offerings. All apps involve something like a device discovery phase, a selection phase, and all is handled by the Cast SDK. Cast SDK can also optionally load an HTML5 page, an HTML5 game for the Google Cast device. The Game Manager leverages the Cast SDK to use the Google Cast device as a hub. Basically, it's going to help you do communication synchronization across multiple devices that are connected to a single Google Cast device. Remote display, which I just mentioned as well, renders frames on the GPU, broadcasts them to the TV for a high-quality game experience. Generally, you're going to be rendering a local UI for controls on your sender device and then stream a gameplay scene up to the TV. You usually add this to the game engine rendering pipeline, and this is definitely not running or loading an HTML5 page, so keep that in mind. We've also built a plugin for Unity. This includes a simulator, so it's going to help you iterate fast and build games really fast. You don't actually have to build a device onto a device to test your game out. And it also includes a sample UI, and we've also built a full open source sample that's available on the Unity Asset Store to help you get started. So you're basically going to focus your time on game design and polishing that two-screen experience. So how do these apps work? There's three parts to consider. The first piece is the sender, aka your phone. It's the secondary screen to the big screen experience. The receiver, or the Google Cast device, it is the big screen experience. And the app ID, which points to the application to show content on the receiver. Now, as a developer, you have to register your app ID at the developer console site. And it has information on how to run your app on the Google Cast device itself, whether it has to fetch a URL or run a remote display app. So the Cast SDK, as I said, takes care of device discovery to find all the Cast devices on your network. Your app will get callbacks if that device list changes. Once a device is discovered, we can show the Cast icon. We tap the Cast icon, you're going to see a list of all the devices that are available. And now this is tied to the app ID. The app ID will allow us to filter out any devices that we don't care about. So if we're building a video app, we're not going to show Chromecast audio in there. And this can also be used for whitelisting when your game is private and it's still in development mode. Once a device is selected, the receiver device basically fetches the URL. If we're doing a web application, fetches the URL that is attached to the app ID, starts a session on the receiver, and then tells the sender that the session is ready and ready to communicate and send and receive commands. So let's say a web application is now running on the receiver, an HTML5 web application. The CAST SDK provides a session. They can exchange messages, and these messages can be customized, something like movement in a game, right? And then the CAST SDK is going to sync the information, keep track of player states and everything, and sync it back to the sender. Now, if you're looking at multiplayer, that's where the game manager comes in for web applications. Basically, the setup for the first sender is exactly the same as we've just described. It's the exact same process, except the session is specifically a game manager game session that is running. For the second sender, it's also a very similar experience. However, instead of hijacking the receiver and running a new application or fetching a new URL, you're simply joining a pre-existing game manager session. And now, basically, Game Manager API syncs player states, updates both senders, and does everything that you need to do in a multiplayer game. Now let's take a look at remote display. So remote display uses the power of the GPU for gameplay. Effectively, it's really sending video to the receiver and rendering all the frames on the phone. This does not load a web application on the receiver. The sender is only streaming images and audio frames to the receiver. The game engine is responsible for both screens, the sender screen and the TV screen. Usually, as I said, it's a UI on the small screen and then the gameplay scene on the TV screen. And the remote display API is encoding and transmitting frames provided by your game. Effectively, the bigger screen is acting like a secondary screen to your phone. You can also think about it as if you're connected through HDMI over Wi-Fi. And we're taking advantage of the Google Cast device decoding capabilities, the hardware decoding capabilities, to have a smoother and high-quality experience for gaming. And it works really well. Some great examples of this is the sample. The Google Cast Remote Display sample is available on the Unity Asset Store. It looks really good, plays really well on the TV, and it has a nice dual analog control scheme on your phone. So you can kind of experience this different control scheme as well as how games react and look on a bigger screen TV. Out right now from Hasbro is Risk. It's the best version of Risk available by far on a mobile phone, and I highly suggest you guys try it. I've already played with friends, and it became so competitive, we had to stop. Another game is Angry Birds Friends. It's so much fun. They have a really nice control scheme where you're basically dragging on your phone, and you don't even have to look down the whole time. Just Dance Now, I mean, it's dancing. Who doesn't like dancing? You're using your phone to move around, and it's been doing tremendously well. So we're very excited to see what you guys come up with, and we hope that similar to how some of you created the best experiences on mobile devices, you create the next set of intimate experiences in the living room. Here are all the resources back up again for reference, and for any questions, please find me after the talk, and I'll be happy to answer any. Thank you.